Hi there.
Hello.
Let's get organized here. We'll call the meeting to order. Just going to wait 1 minute just to see if we can't get Mr.
Ward 4 and Ward 1, we had a meeting today at 10, so we
She was, if you did you get to see her do it? I think you're right. All right. Well, why don't Sherry, are you ready to roll?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and do we have to record?
Yeah, thanks for reminding me.
Just to see that band come across the top and
Great. Where'd it go?
I know I've been losing things like the chat function.
It was because of Lally.
Here.
Naker.
Here.
Prince.
Here.
Tao.
here.
Tolbert.
Here.
Yang.
Here.
Council President Brenmoen.
Here.
7 present, no one absent.
Please stand and join us as Councilmember Tao leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Council President. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Consent agenda items 5 through 26 are before you for your consideration.
Are there any items on consent that should be taken separately? I do see Ms. Mormon has a hand up. Is that just a... Okay. Okay. Is there anything that should come off consent? Seeing none, Mr. Tao moves consent. Roll call.
Jalali.
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The consent agenda is adopted. Item 27, Resolution 21-139, adopting the city's legislative agenda for the 2021 legislative session.
All right, and I think we have our Legislative Affairs Director, Ms. Zhang, here to give us a report. Welcome.
Thank you, Council President Brenmoen and City Council members. It's always a pleasure to come before you. Thank you for this opportunity to talk about the legislative agenda. First, I want to thank all the council members, directors, and community partners who help contribute to the legislative agenda. Without the support of the city council, we can never finalize or pass a resolution to actually advance our legislative agenda. So I really do appreciate all the council members who made time to meet with us, send us edits, and also still continue to, text with me back and forth to finalize last minute details. So thank you very much for that. I come before you with mixed emotions today. First of all, as many of you have already commented on, it's the inauguration of President Joe Biden. So it's great to see a peaceful transfer of power in our country, something that we should take pride in. And the other thing, too, is as a woman of color, it is very emotional for me to see a biracial African Asian American woman become the vice president of the United States. So I just wanted to put that out there. So if I get emotional as I'm watching the inauguration events on one side and presenting to you on another side, I feel both extremely honored to be able to do this work because it helps to expand the work that's happening at the federal level. And the other reason why it's quite emotional for me to be before you is 2020 was extremely difficult and a challenging year for our country, our state, and our city. And it was very challenging at the state legislature. The 2020 legislative session ended early in mid-March because of COVID-19. And since then, we've had 400,000 deaths in the United States, which is pretty devastating. And so the legislature in 2020 was kind of consumed by COVID-19 to the point where we stopped having in-person hearings, and we continue not to have in-person hearings, at least for the Minnesota House. The Minnesota Senate is having hybrid hearings. And we had a record number of special sessions from June all the way to December. There were 7 special sessions. The IGR team is extremely exhausted and beat from the experience because it meant every month we had to gear up for a session, anticipation of something to happen, and then wind down and gear up again. So it's been a tough year for the IGR team, and we anticipate another tough year. So going into the 2021 legislative session, if you look at the legislative agenda, the first 2 pages are consumed by COVID-19 and the killing of George Floyd. And the reason why I put that front and center in our document is because this is an important historical document to reflect what we've been doing and plan to do. And so the majority of the conversation will be about how we respond to COVID-19 and how do we deal with the pervasive and persistent racial inequities in the state of Minnesota. And I provided some historical context and data in the document, but I wanted to give you some new updates because every day there's something that's coming up. And so just yesterday, NPR reported that, what do I have the numbers here? That Minnesota and across the state, COVID-19 has hit communities of color disproportionately hard in both cases and deaths. So we have the highest number of cases and we have the highest number of deaths. And this is especially true for Minnesotans of Hispanic descent. And then the National Women's Law Center reported earlier this year that all the jobs lost in December, which is something like 460, I can't remember the actual number, so I won't say it. All the jobs lost were by women, especially women of color, because traditionally women of color hold lower paying jobs and unstable jobs. And so the data continues to bear out the racial inequities, not only in our country, but in our state. And that will continue to be consume the legislature as we move forward in almost all policy areas. So I wanted to lay that out for you there. At the end of some of the special sessions, the legislature passed a resolution calling structural racism a public health significant public health problem, and they stood up a select committee to deal with racial injustice. There were some recommendations that came out of it, to figure out how, one, to fill that gap at the legislature, and then what policy proposals to advance to narrow the disparities in our state. In line with that, both our city associations, the Metro City and the League of Minnesota Cities, have approved and passed statements on racial equity in their legislative agenda. And I worked with Amy and Mitra, who are both on those individual boards, to craft and move those forward. So in line with the social political environment, the City of St. Paul's IGR team, which mainly consists of me and Christian Taylor, stood up the Racial Equity Legislative Advocacy Work Group with Claire and Marit from the Department of Human Rights. And so the four of us have been convening the Racial Equity Legislative Advocacy Work Group with our about 25 community partners and other city staff. And in the legislative agenda, you'll see that 4 key priorities came out of that. And these priorities are focused on 2 buckets: health equity and economic justice. So it's looking at eviction reform to make sure people can stay housed, emergency services program to address the unsheltered homeless population, driver's license suspension reform to look at how our public or criminal justice system continues to impact the economic status and viability of communities of color, and then the nonprofit infrastructure program and technical support for micro businesses to make sure that our nonprofits and our small businesses stay vibrant because they are the foundation of lots of communities of color. So with that being said, we'll continue to monitor other policy proposals that come out and from the legislature to address the civic unrest that occurred in June and to address the racial injustices that really corralled the community to get organized and activated. So with those priorities, which will take up a lot of space at the legislature, then we have the list of priorities that we developed and got input from our departments. As always, we have a state bonding priority. We were really fortunate in 2020. We finally got our $52 million bridge, 3rd Street Bridge. That was a huge lift it spans over 6 years. It started with the Coleman administration and has been a heavy lift for the Carter administration. So I want to thank all the city council members who, 1, helped us get letters of support, 2, went with us to the Capitol to get support from our St. Paul delegation. And Amy and I have fond memories of all those meetings, running from office to office. But the hard work paid off, and I'm extremely grateful for the work of the city council members. So this year, we, instead of an ask as big as 52 million, we are going a little bit smaller and re-upping the other small initiatives that were not passed last year. So that's the eastbound Kellogg River Center Bridge at 10 million. And then we have 2 smaller asks, the River Learning Center and Como Park Zoo Conservatory. These proposals were all passed by the council in 2020. And because this is a non-bonding year, we did not re-up the process that we normally go through with MMB. Although that process, I just want to plant a seed, will start in May. And so you'll start seeing emails about bonding pretty much in March and April, so we can be ready for the May request from MMB. But with that being said, those are bonding priorities that the city will lead. We also have bonding priorities that the city supports, which is at the very back of the document, the 15-page document. And those are all our support items. We support bonding proposals from Ramsey County. Their number 1 bonding priority is River's Edge at 40 million. Moving next to, and I'm just gonna actually do really high level stuff moving forward. So I always want to emphasize local government aid. This is an appropriations year. And so aid is always up for debate during an appropriations year. And we will push for the governor and the House and the Senate to maintain the LGA levels that they instituted in 2019. And so for the first time in 2019, Governor Walz, along with Speaker Hortman and Majority Leader Gazelka, they reinstituted the levels of funding for LGA that went back to 2003, which was a huge achievement. And so we're asking them to please do not decrease. As always, we ask them for an increase, but at minimum, do not decrease. And as you know very well, LGA is a really critical component of our budget. And then I want to transition down to our housing work. The city has dealt with a significant amount of unsheltered homeless in our community. As you know, the deputy mayor has been working really hard with all of our department directors and our city council members to address this issue. My understanding is that we only have 2 encampments left that we have to relocate individuals to make sure that they're safe from the cold, which is an extraordinary achievement and required a lot of work on behalf of hundreds of people, because as you know, in order to actually transition individuals out of unsheltered encampments, it requires people from the state attorney's office, the police department, the fire department, apartments in Ramsey County. So I won't go into that. But to address some of those concerns, we are supporting a wide range of housing initiatives to be able to make sure that 1, people are moved quickly into emergency shelter, 2, people get wraparound services to address any social emotional needs, and then 3, to really have long-term sustained housing. Permanent housing is key, and actually accessible permanent housing is really important and affordable. And one I'll highlight in particular is a program around emergency services, is the Emergency Services Program. It's a state-run program, and it's unfortunately really poorly funded, but of late, due to COVID-19, the governor has increased the funding to it, but these are one-time pools of funding that have been put in the program. And so along with our housing advocates, the city is going to ask for a $15 million permanent funding base to this program. As I read the statute, it does allow local governments to be able to apply for this funding. So we will work closely with the state and our nonprofit partners to, 1, make sure that there are reasonable levels of funding in this program. I'll tell you that you'll be shocked. Prior to COVID, the funding amount for this program was something like $850,000 for the entire state. It wasn't even $1 million, $850,000. And so after COVID started, everyone realized this is a really flexible pool of funding to be able to quickly respond to the needs in our cities and our counties. And so it's a great opportunity for us to really push this fund. And I want to thank Councilmember Naker for, bringing it to my attention and walking me through it. So thank you for your support on this. There some others that I should highlight is the Local Housing Trust Fund. We've supported it for the past 2 years. We'll continue to support it. The request is to match current existing housing trust funds. There's a cap because St. Paul and Minneapolis have the largest local housing trust funds. The cap is around $350,000 if there was money to be put in there. So far, we've gotten $0 from the state for it. And I also want to make sure that we continue to recognize our renters in the city of St. Paul. And so we continue to support housing advocates who push for tenant rights and remedies. And it continues to be an important part of the conversation as both Minneapolis and St. Paul become increasingly tenant renter majorities. Then I'll move to public safety. With the killing of George Floyd, public safety and criminal justice reform is ever present and important. It was a huge lift in July of 2020 for the Posse Caucus to pass a handful of public safety reforms and police accountability reforms, and they will continue to work on the ones that were not passed. Some of the things that were passed was arbitration reform being led by State Representative Gali Her. And the entire package, actually, our St. Paul delegation played a significant role. Representative Carlos Mariani is the chair of public safety in the House, and he led the charge with advancing this omnibus bill. So we are really grateful to have such strong leaders at the state legislature. Moving forward, the two priorities that we will be leading is around college savings account pilot program. As you know, 2019 we received $500,000 from the state legislature. This year we have to submit a report about how we use the money, and also we worked on a plan of how the state can expand that program. So this year we're going to ask for a policy change. We need access to birth records of children born to unwed mothers, and it was identified through our pilot program that launched in 2020 that this is a huge barrier to accessing some of the most at-risk families. And so that would be a policy priority that we'll be pushing for. The other policy priority in this area will be the People's Prosperity Pilot, where we ask for an exclusion of whatever funding that this pilot program receives. The family should not be harmed by it and should be able to access other funding sources. And so this is not a unique ask. Other programs have been exempted before from financial caps. And so those are two big priorities that we'll be pushing around education and early childhood. Then I will move towards the end around human rights. For the past couple of years, the Department of Human Rights has been going to the legislature with me to push on the issue of contracting. And again, we will go back to the legislature to push for contracting changes so that the city can make sure that more women, minorities, and veterans have access to city contracts. So I will stop there. We have some resiliency initiatives that I wanted to make you aware of too. That resiliency at the federal and state level will continue to be huge priorities, and we'll be monitoring and working closely with Russ Stark, who's on this call, and our legislators who are championing resiliency efforts. So with that, I'll pause and see if you have any questions.
Are there any questions? Ms. Naker.
Thank you, Council President. Just really wanted to thank Ms. Zhang for her work on this, and specifically for the efforts to include the language about supporting efforts to support early childhood care and learning in the agenda, and then the very specific ask for the ESG money in our housing line. I just think it's, we talk all the time about how we need more state and legislative support for our unsheltered homelessness efforts, and I think we just can't waste any opportunity to make that case. So I'm really glad we have that very specific baseline ask.
Thank you. Ms. Prince.
Yeah, I'd also like to thank Ms. Zhang for framing the whole legislative agenda today with your observations about what an important day this is, coming out of a really rough year where we became so clear about the impacts of racial inequity and injustice in our state. So thank you for your work on that. And I also want to thank you for working with my office and incorporating some of the ideas that we brought to the table, specifically around unsheltered homelessness and a few other ideas to make the legislative agenda stronger. So thank you so much for your work on this.
Thank you, Ms. Prince. Are there other questions or comments? I would just jump in and say that I appreciate, first of all, appreciate your hard work and recognize, like, with all the special sessions, this has been an incredibly taxing and complicated year, and especially with this frenzy with which our political year ended. I think that just really had fanned the flames of kind of challenges that we see at the Capitol, often at a lesser level than on the federal level, but increasingly so here. So thank you for navigating that and for your presentation today. I risk it sometimes being a caricature of myself when I repeat things when it comes time for the legislative agenda, but I will say that I think even though it's not a bonding year and that there are huge challenges at hand, recovering from COVID and with our economy, with unemployment and so on, that when it comes time for a bonding request, that I think it's very appropriate for the city of St. Paul to make a large bonding request. We are a large contributor to the state's dollars and cents. And so I think, I know that sometimes I've said to you that I don't think a $50 million request from the city of St. Paul is large. I know this year with the, all in, especially our support for other bonding requests, it is closer to, I think you said 200 million, but I think that's appropriate. And I think that in addition to letting the legislature know what our needs are, because these infrastructure needs really can't wait, it also provides an opportunity to showcase shovel-ready projects that perhaps could be pipeline projects for federal projects should our new president and new vice president come up with federal building programs that we could put these projects in the queue for. So I think that there's a kind of two reasons why we should have these projects out there and have our legislators understand and know, what is shovel ready and what's good to go, whether it's whether we can get the money at state bonding or whether we can get it from our federal government. But I think, again, these investments can't wait. Our infrastructure can't wait. We're talking earlier about the local government aid, and we've discussed the 225 protests, demonstrations, rallies that our police were present at and monitoring over the past year, and those things cost money as well. And so these asks for increased local government aid and finding pots of money like Councilmember Naker did are very important, and we can use all the support we can get, and then add to that the increased cost of our work on encampment. So I just, I feel I recognize the challenges, as you started out by mentioning, of navigating the politics at the Capitol and the kind of rural-urban divide. But I think we do know that the state all does better when we all do better. And so I feel making these bold requests and pushing an agenda of equity is important, and I'm proud of our legislative agenda. Are there other thoughts? All righty. All right. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. I know that if there are amendments to come to our legislative agenda, those can come later in the session. This is our first run at this, but we really appreciate your work, your team's work, and all the departments and contributors that helped get us to this point. So thank you so much for your presentation today. And I would take a motion from Ms. Naker. Roll call.
Jalali.
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Council President Brendan Moen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted. Item 28, AHPC 21-1, a public hearing considering the appeal of the University of St. Thomas to the Heritage Preservation Commission decision of Loris Hall, 2260 Summit Avenue in the Summit West Heritage Preservation District.
And Ms. Jalali, did you need a staff report on this item?
A brief staff report would be great, but if not, that I understand.
I think we
thought
have
someone
staff
would be here. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm here. Yes, I could get one.
Oh, hi. Hi, George. Welcome. You want to introduce yourself and give us a quick staff report?
Yes, thank you, Council President, Council members. I'm George Gause with the Department of Planning and Economic Development. The University of St. Thomas applied to the Heritage Preservation Commission for demolition of the North Dormitory building, which is now referred to as Loris Hall. This action was requested to build a new academic building on campus. The structure is located within the Summit West Heritage District and is considered a contributing building to that district. The area of St. Thomas was originally the campus of the St. Paul Seminary, funded by James J. Hill. The seminary originally consisted of a campus of 6 buildings, including the North Dormitory. all of which were designed by architect Cass Gilbert. After designing the seminary campus, Gilbert was awarded the commission to design the Minnesota State Capitol building, which would bring him national prominence. He would go on to design the Woolworth building in New York City and the U.S. Supreme Court building in Washington, D.C. For demolition applications, the HPC review is focused to 3 conditions in Legislative Code 73079B. 1, architecture and historic merit of the building. The North Dormitory is an original structure to the St. Paul Seminary, which is now University of St. Thomas, designed by Cass Gilbert, who is a noted architect, financed by James J. Hill, who was a prominent St. Paulian. The 2017 Area Historic Assessment speculated that the North Dormitory building is eligible to the National Register of Historic Places individually. However, no nomination has ever been submitted to the state or the federal government for review. Item 2, the effect of demolition on surrounding buildings. Demolition would result in the loss of an early Cass Gilbert structure in St. Paul. Although there has been changes to the campus over time, these early structures do serve as an important reminder of our past. And item 3, the economic value or usefulness of the building as it now exists in comparison with the value or usefulness of any proposed structure designed to replace the present building or buildings. Although the university submitted a substantial application package, it was deficient of substance. The assessment of merit, effect, and value of the North Dormitory building all comes from the perspective of a desire to construct a new building instead of objectively reviewing the existing contributing historic structure. The university has performed an internal options audit of the usefulness of the building. It's not clear exactly who was involved with the options that were studied, what rank voting criteria was used, or how the renovation numbers were determined. The HPC felt an independent, robust exploration of options was needed with independent reviewers from the community. The question of why the new building had to be built in this exact location has not been thoroughly explained. The university has open space, parking lots that could be developed, would avoid demolition costs and sustainability issues such as disposal of demolition waste. The Heritage Preservation Commission voted to deny the demolition 6-1. Any questions?
Ms. Prince.
Thank you, Council President Brennan. Mr. Gause, is it accurate that this will be the first time the city has, if we vote to allow demolition, that it will be the first time the city has allowed the demolition of a contributing structure in a nationally registered historic district?
I believe, Council President, Council Member Prince, I believe so, but there may be something prior to my time that I'm missing. So, that information was shared with me, so it's I guess at this point we'd say it's unconfirmed. But the other concern I have about the seminary buildings is it's my understanding that this is the oldest of the 3 Gilbert buildings on the seminary campus, and that St. Thomas has expressed an interest in demolishing the other 2. Is that accurate? Council President, Council Member Prince, it is the oldest, but we have not been formally told they have a desire to demolish other buildings. There has been speculation from the public, but the university has not given us any plans for any other demolitions.
And I'm wondering, in this case, in one of our recent cases, the HPC had urged the developer to meet with the opponents to see if there was some place to get. I'm struck by the fact that St. Thomas did not share why this was the only appropriate location or the other aspects of how it considered alternatives. And I wondered if that had come up at all I guess instead you the HPC voted to demolish, but I'm struck in this file that I have gone through carefully that those alternatives were not presented, and it looks as though at least one of them allowed for the building of 120,000 square foot building that is the STEAM Institute that they want to build in the existing parking lot next to the North Dormitory. Can you confirm that?
Council President, Councilmember Prince, we have not seen any proposal for the STEAM building. We've only been concentrating on the demolition of the structure. At some point in the future, if demolition is allowed, we will have to also review the STEAM building on the campus. The HPC would have to review the STEAM building.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Prince. Are there other questions for Mr. Gause? Ms. Naker.
Thank you, Council President. Mr. Gause, I'm just curious. I know that in this case we are considering an error by the HPC in fact-finding or procedure, and I'm just wondering what specific claims do the appellants make in terms of what errors the HPC committed?
Council President, Councilmember Naker, the error that they are saying the HPC made is that the building is not considered historic or contributing to the district. They feel that the building is not contributing because the district itself is primarily a residential district, and this is an academic industrial building, an institutional building.
And just as a quick follow-up, it seems like they're also there's a distinction between architecturally or historically significant and contributing, I seem to read in the materials, and that the requirement of the HPC is to consider architecturally or historically significant, not necessarily contributing may or may not be significant. Is that a true distinction?
Council President, Councilmember Naker, yes, their assertion is that they don't feel the building is contributing to the district. However, in the original designation form for Summit Avenue West, it was noted as a contributing structure to the district. So.
Does that answer your questions, Ms. Prince? Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Prince, you must be muted.
Mr. Gause, although the building itself, an application wasn't made for historic designation, the fact that it is in a historic, nationally registered historic district, and it was identified in the West Summit Preservation District as a contributing property would establish it as a contributing property, wouldn't it?
Council President, Councilmember Prince, that's correct. We do consider that designation, that nomination designation, that would establish it as a contributing structure.
Does that answer your question, Ms. Prince?
Yes.
Okay. Are there other questions? Ms. Jalali?
Oh, no, I was just getting in line to speak next after everyone's questions are done.
All right. I'm just making sure. Are there other questions for Mr. Gause at this time? Okay. Ms. Jalali.
Okay, thank you. Well, I really appreciate the questions and the chance to get the staff report. I've been taking input on this through comments to our office, and I've also had the chance to review everything that's been presented. So I'd like to just talk through some reasoning here, and I am ultimately actually going to move to approve St. Thomas's appeal. So I want to say that outright. I believe the school has satisfied the factors of St. Paul Legislative Code section 73.0612, and under the standard it has to meet, it could be granted a permit to actually demolish this building to create a better building ultimately in its place. So the factors that I'm looking at are First of all, regarding HPC finding number 2, that Loris Hall is a contributing structure to the locally designated Summit Avenue West Heritage District. An independent review by the National Register of Historic Places found that the West Summit Avenue Historic District held historical significance overall, but the significance was based almost entirely on the residential homes along Summit Avenue and not necessarily for buildings like Loris Hall. I think that's an important distinction. HPC finding number 3 found that this hall has been determined to be potentially eligible to the National Register of Historic Places in a 2017 report by Hess, Royce & Company. That report, as noted previously, specifically did not find this building to be itself worthy of designation. And I was intrigued by the letters of support of the appeal. I think it was 14-1 with the Mac Grove Council and very similar vote split at the Union Park District Council, very strong support from both district councils in support of the appeal. And mentioning heavily the equity and sustainability goals our city has set out and how the building strives to do that. But as one board member noted in such communications, it was also recently discovered Bishop Loris, who the building was named after, was actually a slave owner and used his profits from chattel slavery toward future projects. And I do think that brings to light an unfavorable historical significance of this building, actually. So I think that's also part of the consideration we have to make when gauging the historical impact. HPC finding number 4 found the structure was designed by a noted architect. I've heard the name Cass Gilbert a few times. Clearly an important commission for him, an important milestone in his career, but not all buildings designed by noted architects are themselves architecturally or historically significant. I do not think that the fact that an architect designed a particular building makes it grounds to preserve a building when you have to take into account the competing land uses and goals that we're trying to meet as a city for the future. HPC finding number 5 determined the application for demolition failed to account for the merit, effect, and value of Loris Hall, but it's clear based on the analysis of the cost to relocate or reuse it that it has been deliberated how the building could serve current and future use by students, faculty, and staff in the school community. It was originally designed as a dorm. It has been repurposed to serve as offices, musical practice rooms, and prayer rooms. But there are limited ways to reuse a building with a layout from more than a century ago. And as the Union Park District Council said in their support of the project, they recognize the difficulty in integrating the building into the STEAM building and also support the university's plans for a project that's intended not only as an academic resource for its students, but an amenity for the university's broader community. So it's my hope that the new building actually will have more benefit, not just to the school community of now after a century of this building being in existence and getting much use and reuse out of it, but also to existing neighbors and groups in the community hoping to use spaces like this. And HPC finding 6 determined the demolition would adversely affect the program for the preservation and architectural control of the Summit Avenue West Preservation District, but the removal of Loris Hall on its own does not actually impact the integrity of the district. A standalone building largely surrounded by surface parking lots being rebuilt as a better building, it is actually clear, and Commissioner Nelson from the HPC did state, all things considered, Loris Hall can be demolished without undue damage to our historic heritage. Lastly, and I think this is the most important reasoning for me, as the Mac Grove Community Council explained in their letter of support for the project, Loris Hall does not contribute to the sustainability and resiliency goals in the City of St. Paul 2040 Comprehensive Plan. And it was noted in the staff report that there are concerns about environmental impacts due to demolition of old buildings. But this is a common argument cited against new construction, against new development, and updates to old buildings that are overall very unsustainable when compared to energy efficiency of new buildings that can be built today and for the future. And the actual process of creating a new building is not in and of itself less sustainable than actually having a new building. A centuries-old building with limited ability to be reused should not inhibit the creation of a new space that can provide modern space for both students and community members. So there's many, many reasons that I've been able to deliberate through today, but these are the basis for my findings, and I'd like to reiterate my motion to approve St. Thomas's appeal based on these factors. Thanks.
All right, so Ms. Jalali moves approval. Is there discussion on that motion? Ms. Prince. Ms. Prince, you're on mute.
I of course, I will be speaking against the motion. If preserving our city's history and architecture is why we have an HPC, this building, also known as the North Dormitory, is the poster child. The building was built through the coming together of three giants of Minnesota history: Archbishop John Ireland, Great Northern Railroad magnate James J. Hill, and Minnesota's most important architect, Cass Gilbert. I know the University of St. Thomas and its campus well from the time that I served in the Ward 4 office to Council Member Jay Benenab. And when St. Thomas sought to expand its campus to include the two historic blocks between Summit and Grand, Cleveland and Cretin, Councilmember Benenab worked with the university and preservationists to save contributing historic buildings that the school had planned to demolish. Located in the West Summit Avenue Historic District on the National Register of Historic Places, St. Thomas is a huge beneficiary of its location on the best preserved 19th century Victorian Boulevard in the United States. In 2004, when St. Thomas opted to consider alternatives to demolition, it honored its debt of stewardship to the historic district in 2004 when it determined that preserving those buildings was the best thing to do for reuse in its campus planning. I'm concerned about when we say that it's a choice between preserving our history and creating new facilities to meet vital modern community needs. It is not either or, and this is a false choice. St. Thomas apparently explored as many as 5 alternatives on its campus before deciding to remove this historic building. And as I said earlier, and I have it on good authority, one of those alternatives was the parking lot on the east side of the building, which provides enough room to build the 120,000 square foot STEAM Institute. There's seas of parking lots at St. Thomas, and they put up their parking ramp at Cretin and Grand a few years ago that I believe is significantly underused. And then there's a parking ramp in the Anderson Center. Again, I'm concerned about if it is the case that this is a precedent that we will be passing today to allow the demolition of a contributing structure in a nationally registered historic district. And I do want to say, in view of the work that Councilmember Benenab did roughly 15 years ago, that I did reach out to President Sullivan before this meeting without stating a position, but just simply suggesting that she consider St. Thomas's role of stewardship of our city's history and take a hard look at those numerous alternatives that were considered to demolition in this case. In any event, I also think that the Hess and Royce report has been improperly quoted here and in the appeal because it was incomplete. It did find that, in fact, this building was historically significant. It expressed concern about the integrity of the seminary campus. And I'll also say that this being the oldest of the 3 Cass Gilbert buildings on the seminary campus, I warn my colleagues also that by our action today, that we are basically going to be sending the message that demolition of the remaining Cass Gilbert buildings in this area is right by us. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Prince. And I apologize for asking this, but I Ms. Tierney, do you have any concerns about Ms. Prince's call to the president of the school, just given the quasi-judicial nature of these HPC appeals? Or was that fall in a okay territory? Just talking about precedents and making sure that we're following our own rules.
Yeah, Council President Brenmo, and I don't know a whole lot about that call, but I can certainly look into that in the future. Depending on how the vote goes, that may or may not be of more or less concern.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you for entertaining that question. The intention is not to get you. That's just more of like, what can we do and what can't we do? So thanks. Thank you for that.
Council President.
There's been one coming up. Ms. Prince.
If I could just say, I was clear in the email that the council is not able to take a position. And I said outside of a position for or against demolition, I just suggested that those alternatives were something that it might be worth exploring. So.
Okay. I think that's helpful to have on the record. I appreciate that. All right. So there is a motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Jalali,
Aye.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
No.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang. Aye. Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
6 in favor, 1 opposed, being Councilmember Prince. The public hearing is closed and the motion of intent is approved. I should say the appeal is approved. Item 29, resolution public hearing 21-8, authorizing the police department to accept an anonymous gift.
All right. This is a public hearing. We've held a public hearing online and over the phone. As such, Ms. Naker moves to close the public hearing and approve. Roll call.
Jalali,
Aye.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince. You're on
Miss-
mute.
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang. Aye. Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item number 30, resolution public hearing 21-9, authorizing the police department to accept a gift from the St. Paul Police Foundation.
All right. We've held the public hearing online and over the phone. As such, Ms. Prince moves to close the public hearing and approve. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Jalali,
Aye.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang. Aye. Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 31, resolution public hearing 21-10, authorizing the police department to accept a gift from the Minneapolis Police Federation Charities.
All right. We've held a public hearing online and over the phone. As such, Mr. Tolbert moves to close the public hearing and approve. Any discussion? Roll call.
Jalali,
Aye.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao. Councilmember, you're muted.
Aye. Sorry.
Tolbert, Councilmember Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 32, resolution public hearing 21-11, approving the final combined plat for Western Highland Bridge at 966 Mississippi River Boulevard.
All right. And this is a public hearing. We've held that public hearing online and over the phone. And I know staff is here if folks have questions. Are there any questions on this item? If there are none, Mr. Tolbert will move to close the public hearing and approve. Roll call.
Jalali.
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. The legislative hearing officer recommends adoption of the following resolutions as no objections to these recommendations were received. Item 33, RLH VBR 20-79, 341 Arbor Street. Item 34, RLH SAO 21-5, 1023 Burr Street. Item 35, RLH BBR 21-1, 963 Como Boulevard East. Item 36, RLH TA 20-618, 895 DeSoto Street. Item 37, RLH SAO 21-3, 1122 Earl Street. Item 44, RLH OA 21-1, 355 State Street and 328 Florida Street. Item 45, RLH TA 20-627, 937 Thomas Avenue. Item 46, RLH TA 20-621, 1600 Thomas Avenue. Item 47, RLH TA 20-619, 694 Van Buren Avenue. We're going to skip over to 49, that will be taken later. Item 50, RLH VBR 21-2, 1054 University Avenue West. And the motion is to adopt these items.
So moved by Mr. Tao. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Jalali.
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Prince. Councilmember, you're on mute.
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearings are closed and the resolutions are adopted. For the following items, no objection to the legislative hearing officer's amended recommendation was received, and therefore she recommends amendment and adoption of items 42, RLH TA 20-286, 158 Sydney Street East. Item 52, RLH AR 20-146, property cleanup services. And item 53, RLH AR 20-147, also property cleanup services. And again, the motion would be to amend and adopt.
So moved by Ms. Yang. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Jalali.
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearings are closed and the resolutions are adopted as amended. For the following items, the legislative hearing officer's recommendation is to continue the public hearing to the dates that I'll be noting. Item 39, RLH TA 21-21, 1030 4th Street East, July 21st. Item 40, RLH TA 20-667, May 19th. Item 41, RLH, I didn't say the address, I'm sorry, 1508 Ivy Avenue East. Item 41, RLH RR 20-55, 578 LaFond Avenue, February 3rd. And item 48, RLH TA 21-17, 634 Watson Avenue, July 21st. And again, the motion is to continue the public hearings to those dates.
So moved by Ms. Naker. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Jalali.
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearings are continued to the dates that were noted. For the following items, the legislative hearing officer's recommendation is to refer the items to legislative hearing on January 26th. Item 43, RLH RR 20-22, 678 Snelling Avenue North. And item 51, RLH RR 20-32, 901 York Avenue. And again, now the motion is to refer the legislative hearing on January 26th.
So moved by Ms. Yang. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Jalali.
Aye.
Maker.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolutions are referred to legislative hearings on January 26. For the following item, the legislative hearing officer's recommendation is contested and additional testimony from the appellant is in the record. This is item 49 RLHTA 20-620, 227 University Avenue North. And we have a staff report.
Is this one Western Avenue North?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Mormond.
Council President, council members, testimony was received by way of email at 3:38 p.m. So after the initiation of the council meeting, it has been attached to your record so you can see it, and I will go over it so that you have it verbally on your record as well. This case is an assessment for a cleanup. There's no dispute of the facts. The grass around the property and on the boulevard was between 1 and 2 feet high throughout. The city issued orders for that to be taken care of on June 29th. The compliance date was 4 days later, July 3rd. The inspector actually made it out there July 9th, so fully 10 days after the order was a recheck and the grass had grown even taller. And the following day, the parks crew went and removed the tall grass and weeds and cleaned up the property. The cost for doing this work was $322. The appellant is a new owner of the property, so the work happened on July 10th and he purchased the property on July 20th. He is saying, this didn't show up as a pending assessment and the previous owner didn't tell me what happened, and so I don't feel like I should be responsible for paying for this work that happened. The way it works when you buy a property is that it is incumbent upon the seller to disclose to the buyer that not only if there are pending assessments, but also if there are orders which have been issued which will result in assessments. And that is something that people sign on the dotted line about. The seller did not disclose this to the buyer. In the course of the legislative hearing, the appellant, Mr. James Coolican, did indicate that he thinks he did talk to his realtor about it, which was a suggestion from us that we always say, talk to your realtor, have your realtor be your advocate on your behalf, talk to your title company. We will provide you with video, the orders that were sent, evidence of the cleanup, so that you have that information that your realtor can talk to their realtor, and hopefully everything can be handled in a polite and professional manner. In this particular case, he said that his realtor didn't think it was really worth it. It was kind of a huge hassle for that amount of money, and can't the city be responsible for it? I did explain that this is a private dispute from the city's perspective. We were not party to this property transfer, and therefore we don't have a role in any misinformation that was provided, and that he, as the purchaser, did have responsibility, and that's the way the city treats these cases. The new owner did say, hey, why isn't this like Comcast, where you actually go after the seller? Why do I have to do it? And finally, he indicated that the seller was a deadbeat and wasn't going to pay. The additional testimony that he provided to you in the email is as follows. We were assessed for yard nuisance work that occurred before we took possession of the home. The previous owner of the home, who is the one who is actually responsible for this debt, and his realtor and title company are unresponsive. If nothing else, the city council should consider changing the ordinance so that the person who incurs the debt is held responsible for it, not a new homeowner who had nothing to do with the nuisance. This isn't actually city code. So this isn't a change that you would be able to engage. This is how property taxes work. So I I don't have anything to add except that the owner of the property is responsible for the property taxes. And when you buy a property, you buy its debts as well. So I can answer any questions on that. But that is what the property's owner's concern is. And our normal practice would be to give him as much information as we could to help document getting paid back from the seller, which should be where it lands rather than on the taxpayers of the city as a whole, covering for the private transaction.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mormon. That was these things come up from time to time, and it's almost like we got our annual refresher of how these work. I mean, I think that was a very thorough explanation, and I appreciate that very much. Are there questions for Ms. Mormon? Mr. Tao.
Ms. Mormon, do we know if this property was a single family home, or I mean like a owner occupied prior to the sale, or was it a rental property? Do we know?
I can check that for you. I don't have that at my fingertips, no.
Mm-hmm.
I can, if you give me just a moment, I can give you that detail.
Yep. I guess
the order to remove the tall grass and weeds was sent to Sean Abrams, who is located in Mounds, Minnesota. That tells me that this is an investment property.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. No further question. I would move to approve the hearing officer's recommendation.
All right, Mr. Tom moves the recommendation of the legislative hearing officer. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Jalali.
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Council President Bredmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. The last item, RLHRR 20-45, 2531 Edgecombe Road. The legislative hearing officer's recommendation is to withdraw it.
All right, so the last item has been withdrawn. All right, so we have reached the end of our meeting agenda, I believe. Is there news from the ward or thoughts from today that we'd like to share before we move to adjournment? Ms. Prince? I don't know if you had a hand up or your mic's off, so just.
Oh, sorry. No, my mic was off. And I don't have any good news from the ward, although I'm sure there's plenty of it. But again, to Ms. Zhang's point at the beginning of our meeting today, what an important day this is for our country. And it's worth noting that things are going to get better.
I feel an incredible sense of relief myself. Other thoughts before we move to adjournment? All right. Well, it's 37 degrees and sunny outside, so I feel like there's a new day ahead of us, and hopefully folks can get outside yet and enjoy it. There's no other business in front of us, so we will be adjourned. Thank you, folks.